Today I'm going to let you into the mind of a church planter. It's a scary place. And the thing about being a church planter is you're an entrepreneur. So you're out on a limb, you're trying stuff, you're putting yourself out there. And when you plant a church, you're doing a few things. You're asking people to come and join something that you have started personally, which is it's a deeply personal thing. It really feels like it's part of you. You're asking people to come and be with you. So every affirmation of that is brilliant, and every rejection of that is sometimes quite hard to take. And you're also hoping that God blesses what you do and that you're doing the right thing. You're hoping that people get saved. You're hoping that you will be able to make some sort of impact on the city that you're planting into. So it feels like it's quite an out there experience. It's uncomfortable. Like I said, it's deeply personal. At least always felt it for me, like it was some part of your soul in a funny sort of way. And because of that, it can be quite insecure at times as well. And because you're investing in something, you've perhaps moved jobs, you may have displaced your family, you may have taken some financial kind of risks in order to make this thing happen. All of this is bundled up into a huge ball, and it sits within you most of the time. That's what church planting is. It's wonderful, isn't it? But in all of that, the prophetic can be very helpful. It can also be a bit of a hindrance, and I want to talk about that today. And by the prophetic, I mean quite simply, God tells somebody something about you or about your situation, and that person comes and tells you about it. And how God tells them could be in any number of ways, whether words in the night or dreams or visions or just hints or feelings or clues or whatever they are. But that person comes to you and says, I feel like God has told me something about you, and let's weigh it together, and I want to bring this. Now, obviously, the prophetic can be very helpful because it gets you moving. So for us to move to Manchester, however many years ago that was, 8 years ago, what happened there is we had a number of dreams, or I had a number of dreams about it. We had a number of people bring prophetic words. It was all massively helpful to get us moving. And when I look back on that time, sometimes I wonder if I was so chicken that I needed all of that stuff to happen in order for me to move in the first place. But nonetheless, God was very kind and gracious, and the prophetic got us moving. The prophetic also can give you a clear idea or vision of what you want to actually do. Obviously, God says you should move to Manchester. And for us, it was move to Manchester, and also had a real deep sense of wanting something for young people. Something for people who wouldn't go to church normally. That was really what we felt, and it gave us something to articulate. And also, the prophetic can really help you to stop thinking in short-term kind of blocks and actually think, well, God's called me to this, so that's going to get me through difficult times. It's going to keep me kind of even keel when things are going well, and it really should be a way of stopping short-term thinking. So the prophetic should build you in for something long-term. That's how it can be just immensely helpful for a church planter. And sometimes, and I tread very carefully when I say this, the prophetic can be a little bit unhelpful. At least I have found it to be that way. And so what do I mean by that? Well, from my experience, I've found myself in prayer meetings or Christian events where people are around and praying for you, and it's a good thing. But then somebody will come and bring a prophetic word which just feels so big that I just couldn't work out how to process it, get my head around it. Like the classic would be, you're going to change the whole city, or thousands of people, or yada yada yada. And then on our next Sunday meeting or our next gathering, there will be 12 of us, and 5 people are away, and 3 people are considering moving to another church, and 4 people don't think you're doing a very good job, and all of those sorts of things. And the difference between the big prophetic word and the reality was just... Now, there'll be people out there who say, well, that's the whole point, Tim, isn't that the whole point? The prophetic word helps you pitch forward into something much bigger, and maybe. But personally, I found it very difficult because I couldn't match the two together, the reality and what was being suggested. And I realised a couple of things that were very helpful. The first thing I realised was actually God didn't need my permission for those big things. So if he had this big thing that he wanted to do, then fine. He was going to do it, whatever I thought of it or not. I was going to be obedient on the ground and do what I was doing. But actually the big thing, if God was going to do that, great, I'd be there for the rides. But if not, then that's fine. And so I decided actually what we need to do is really keep focused on what we're doing and to work hard. And so I would only hold on to a few prophetic words or a few kind of big clues from God. And I still hold on to those same ones, and some of them are pretty old, and there haven't been any great new ones, to be honest. And that really works for me. Now, I'm not saying God isn't going to break in and say something different, and that's entirely up to him. And, you know, it's, in a funny way, it's not my problem. If God's going to do that, he's going to do that. And I also realised that I didn't need a prophetic word to instruct me on everything. So the next new initiative, for a while I was thinking, well, we need to hear from God in this, or I really need to understand what God wants me to do in this moment. And actually I realised that God grows us up. He gives us wisdom, maturity, age, grey hair, these sorts of things. And in that, God speaks, and he puts wise people around us. So for our first move to Manchester, just to be slightly provocative, God really told us, made it very clear, this is what you've got to do. You've got to move to Manchester, start a church for young people, and do that. And that's what we did, and that's what we got. That's what happened. And the second move, which was within Manchester, actually, we finished that plant, we handed it on to someone else, we went and planted something else. In that, for me, God didn't really say very much about it at all. I couldn't say God spoke to me and said this, and I had to go. Actually, we realised in a team of us talking about it, in me and Vicky, my wife, talking about it, that actually we were going to do something new, and we were asked, go and plant this. This would be a good thing. Give this thing up, give it to someone else, go and plant this. And in that, God's, I think, spoke. But there were no clear prophetic words. It was a sense of, you should go and do this. And so for us, the obedience was in the wisdom and the experience that was around us. So I guess if you're a church planter out there, I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you in those moments where somebody brings a massive prophetic word for you, and in your heads, you're thinking, what on earth do I do with that? How? I don't even understand. But I would say God doesn't need your approval to make those things happen, so don't worry about them. And actually, you are doing the right thing. You're working hard on the grounds, making things happen, putting one foot in front of the other. In the early years, you're trying to survive, and then as it gets going, more things happen for you. You get some momentum. Those bigger prophetic words, which seem to come in a rush at the beginning of things when lots of people are excited around you about what's happening, if they mean something to you, then just park them and go back to them in a few years' time. But don't feel bad about them when comparing them to what's going on now. I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to communicate something of what I felt like in the when it comes to the prophetic in church planting, how sometimes it can be very helpful for me, and at other times it's just really not helpful at all. And tonight, Andy Martin is going to be on the broadcast, and he's going to talk about how to hear God in your church plant, really how you build a community of people that hear God together. That will be on thebroadcastnetwork.org.uk. Thanks very much for listening. I hope it's helpful. If you've got any questions, just post them on the blog, on the Facebook, and we'll do our best to answer them.